So, after the release of Frontiers, Sonic Team announced that there will be 3 major updates for the game, and of course, as a result, a lot of the game changed because of these updates. So that's why I'm here once again to talk about Sonic Frontiers. However, let me make one thing clear. This is not another version of the review. This is just a simple revisit of the game to discuss the major changes, and also see if my opinions have changed over the course of the waves. If you want my original opinions on Sonic Frontiers, I'll leave a card for it on the top of the screen at the end of the video if you want to check it out. Now, in terms of what's changed, the first thing in terms of base game is that you can now restart cyberspace levels without pausing by holding both of the triggers and pressing the touchpad. Yeah, this is nice and all, but it never really bothered me just to hit the restart button on the pause screen, but it's cool. Next is the fact that you can turn off the slot machines for Starfall Knots, and thank God! In the review, I said that I didn't like the Starfall Nights because of the slot machine taking up too much screen space and the beacons being literally everywhere on the map, but now you can just turn it off and not worry about it. Also, they finally fixed how the Elder and Hermit Coco work. You can now upgrade multiple stats with them, making it much faster. Thank you, I don't have to sit through that stupid animation anymore. Also, I didn't really mention this back in the original review because it didn't really bother me too much, but when you obtain the maximum number of rings you can carry, you would enter Power Boost, which basically gave you a taste of your max speed unless you lost rings. However, every time you enter this state, a small cutscene will play to show that you got it, and it just kind of stopped you in your tracks. I didn't mention it because it didn't bother me too much. It was kind of similar to how the Guardians have their intro play every time you see them. It gave me a second to recollect myself, but also you can now turn that off if you want to. So let's talk about the first wave of DLC, the sights, sounds, and speed. Let's first talk about the feature that I didn't really care about, photo mode. It's pretty standard. Most games nowadays have a photo mode, and it was inevitable that Frontiers would get it. It's a nice distraction if you want to show off Sonic doing a cool pose or looking off in the distance on a tower, but it's not really for me. Next is the jukebox, and I actually love this feature. I've always been a sucker for sound tests or some variation in video game, and it's probably why I listen to OSTs most of the time, but that's besides the point. Jukebox mode allows you to listen to songs from various Sonic games while exploring the islands. You only start off with 14 songs, but you get more by just finding these orange music notes spread out on the maps. It's really nice because it makes going through the islands for memory tokens a little more fun. It's also nice listening to some of my favorite Sonic themes from the past, like Misty Lake from Black Knight, Kingdom Valley from 06, and even Green Forest from Sonic Adventure 2. Now, here is the biggest addition to Frontiers with this wave, the challenge modes, and I'll just say, I enjoy these modes. The first mode is Battle Rush mode, which is essentially several rounds against enemies in all of the islands. You're ranked for your performance at the end, and if you manage to get an S rank in all of the challenge, you unlock extreme difficulty. Yeah, a whole new difficulty for the main story. Extreme mode is the hardest mode, as Sonic will be stuck at level 1 for the whole game, and enemies kill you in one hit, no matter what. This is a nice reward for people who wanted a challenge in Frontiers, but for me, this was kinda underwhelming. I don't know what I was expecting for this, but at least it's better than having a star on your profile or something, so I applaud the game for giving a reward that means something and encourages replayability. Now, there's also a second challenge mode, which is cyberspace. It's kind of similar to Battle Rush mode, but you're rushing through all the cyberspace levels in every island. Like normal, you're ranked for your performance at the end of this mode. If you manage to get an S ranks on all the challenges, you unlock Power Boost in cyberspace, and honestly, I feel like this is a better reward than Extreme mode, because now it gives me more ways to speedrun cyberspace levels, especially because I really liked them beforehand. Also, it makes getting S ranks in 1-2 much easier. Overall, the sights, sounds, and speed update is a great start for the DLC waves for Frontiers, and it can only get really better from here. With these changes, I would say that Sonic Frontiers is just a little better than I thought it was, but it still has some issues, but I think the next update was better. Because the next update was the Sonic Birthday Bash, and honestly, this one was pretty small compared to the sights, sounds, and speed. First, I added some costumes for Sonic, the Coco, and Sonic's friends, so they all wear birthday attire, and you can change the game's environment to be a birthday bash theme. I didn't do this for the review because I really don't like it. The new HUD is too distracting for me. Now, the meat of this update is in the island time trials. Basically, it's a set of 10 time trials on the island where Sonic needs to run around the islands and collect these yellow orbs to increase his multiplier. You get points by doing almost anything: boosting, defeating enemies, going through boost pads, and a bunch of other stuff. It's not much. However, if you S rank these, you get the spin dash, and oh yeah, this was fun. I love using the spin dash to basically launch myself around the islands and in cyberspace. It uses the boost meter, but with what I'm about to talk about, it won't be an issue. Also, with this update, we're the village leader Coco. They're hidden behind some harder platforming challenges on the islands, and if you take them to the Coco Elder, he increases your boost meter. I both like and don't really care about this upgrade. One, this seems a little pointless with the infinite symbol trick using side looping, and two, running out of boost has never really been an issue to me, but I will say I do enjoy being able to boost for a longer period. Unfortunately, the boost meter doesn't carry over in cyberspace. Also, this update added more songs to the jukebox, which was just the island movements, which I'm really happy they added. I liked some of the island movements, and it was a little more frustrating that you were stuck on the 7th movement after the island is finished, especially if you were like me and getting Chaos Emeralds within seconds of each other, so you never really got to hear the other movements. This update also adds a new costume for Sonic if you manage to 100% every island, and I mean you have to map out the island, find all the Coco leaders, defeat every Guardian, find all the memory tokens, reel in every fish with Big, and finish all the side story interactions. If you were like me, you most likely did a lot of this, so the crown is mine. And finally, the update adds New Game Plus, where it's just pretty standard. You replay the main story with all of your upgrades. The game difficulty doesn't really change, and it's nice if you want to play through the story as fast as possible. Overall, this wave was fine, nothing too crazy, and I enjoyed locking the spin dash, and the new Coco did incorporate some new platforming challenges, something the base game kinda needed. Now on to the final Horizons. This is it, the one that people have been waiting for. New playable characters and story content. I was excited for this one. I got hyped at the trailer, and I waited for hours for this one to download on launch night, and dear lord, what happened? Okay, first let's run with the positives. First, I will say playing as Tails, Amy, and Knuckles is fun. None of them really have any issues that I've noticed, and they're all about the same in terms of speed as Sonic. And they all have their own twist to make them stand out. Amy has a triple jump that goes into a slow descent, Knuckles can glide and climb certain walls, and Tails can fly for a limited time. They all have their own skill trees and stats to upgrade, but they're pretty quick, so don't worry about having to grind too much, especially if you're lucky enough to get a Starfall Night where the items you need for upgrades drop all over the islands, and you get them a lot quicker after picking them up. Also, I will say that I actually really like the soundtrack for this DLC. I won't spoil too much about the plot for this DLC, because it's basically an alternate ending of the base game, and in some instances, I think that the ending is better than the one that we actually got, especially if the final boss is concerned. Now, on to the reason I screamed out, dear lord. It's all with Sonic. First, I will say that I like some of his new cyberspace levels. They're all reskin levels from the base game, but they were given some gimmicks that can be interesting, such as low gravity or a rev mechanic when boosting. I was kind of hoping for more originality, but this isn't too bad. What's funny is that I didn't have to do any of the cyberspace levels. I found a bunch of Lookout Coco in the overworld by accident. It's the towers that are the problem. First, you have to climb to the top of the towers with some pretty janky platforming challenges, where if you end up screwing up, you have to start all over, or, in some cases, reload your file. Now, the trials themselves in the towers, all of them basically require that you master the combat system, but that's not the issue here. They take away your upgrades and limit what you can do in some instances, and that can be a fair challenge. I finally did feel satisfied when I finally got past the Trial of the Snake and the Master King Coco trial, but I felt more reminded of Eggman Land from Sonic Unleashed, and I don't know if that's something I want to be thinking about. I will admit that I did think that Frontiers was a little too easy, but do consider that this game is marketed towards children. However, this DLC is basically a giant screw you to anyone who complains about how easy base Frontiers is. It also reeks with bad design choices, as if no one playtested the content before it came out. Now, I know that kind of sounds mean, but it's just what I feel. Now, I'm not saying that that's entirely a bad thing. One reason I say that it feels like there was no playtesting was just because of how easy it is to break the game with the other playable characters. They can all access their EXP and map Coco by just flying into it or jumping just high enough. And this basically makes the platforming sections kind of pointless. Now, I mentioned that this could be a good thing back in the base game, so I'm not criticizing it here. However, there are times where I think the missions felt a little too precise, to the point to where if you make one mistake, you have to start all over, and that's kind of the difficulty I'm not a huge fan of. The difficulty spike is a bit much, but with enough perseverance, you can do it. However, I do feel a little bad for the kids who were looking forward to this DLC. The Final Horizons DLC is overall okay. Besides the obnoxious difficulty spike towards the end, the new playable characters are fun to explore Oranos Island with. The only thing holding this DLC back is just how difficult it gets suddenly. There was no need for this difficulty, especially when everything else in the DLC was pretty easy and for the most part enjoyable. I also think that some of the jank that exists in the combat wasn't taken into account when making the DLC, because there are some instances where I felt like things could have been smoother in the boss fights, but this was a problem in the base game as well. However, it was more noticeable here. Here's a tip for the final boss, by the way. Use the L1 or R1 buttons to change targets and attack the chain connected to Supreme. The game tells you to sever the chain, but it doesn't really tell you how to do it. Overall, the DLC for Sonic Frontiers pretty much improved everything that I found lacking with the base game. Besides the Final Horizons DLC, I think Frontiers is a little better than I did initially. If you haven't gotten Sonic Frontiers, you can find it on the PC, Xbox One, PlayStation, and Nintendo Switch. And with all the free content, I think it's worth its price tag now. Besides the difficulty of the Final Horizons, I think that the DLC is still fun and enhances the game as it should. If I were to make a recommendation, get the PC version, because you can mod it and get rid of some of the issues that already existed within the game, such as the pop-in. And that's really much it. If you want my original opinions of Sonic Frontiers, I'll leave a link to the original review in the description, along with some links to some Let's Plays I've done. I recently finished Shadow the Hedgehog, and I'm currently doing a playthrough of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order and Fire Emblem Engage. Thank you guys very much for watching, and see you guys next time.